Nebraska, a Midwestern state located right in the middle of the United States. Nebraska is known for its small communities and corn. Lots and lots of corn. Nebraska gets a bad rap because there's seemingly nothing to do here, and as a Nebraska resident, I don't completely agree. We have the Henry Doorly Zoo. That place is awesome. I love going there with friends and family. However, we're not here to discuss the zoo. We're here to discuss a less wholesome place in Nebraska. The one, the only, Ball Cemetery. Ball Cemetery is one of the oldest cemeteries in the state of Nebraska, with the first headstone being laid down in 1869. It started as the Ball family's private cemetery and is still in the family to this day. One soul laid to rest at Ball Cemetery is William Liddard, better known as Rattlesnake Pete. Liddard is something of a local historical figure. He lived in the small town of Springfield, Nebraska, and was elected the sheriff of Sarpin County. Liddard was well respected by locals, but he eventually left his hometown to join the famous Buffalo Bill for a life of adventure. Liddard would die on the West Coast, but his body was taken back to his home to be buried at Ball Cemetery. Now, I swear this video is way more than a boring history lesson. There is so much more to Ball Cemetery than the Nebraska residents lay to rest there. You see, Ball Cemetery is said to be haunted. It's something of an urban legend in this part of the state, and I've heard about it every once in a while. I even have my own story about Ball Cemetery, but don't get too excited, it's not super paranormal by any means. But I decided to include it anyway because why not? This happened years ago. It was so long ago that I can't even remember how old I was at the time, probably 10 or 11. I had a friend who lives right outside Louisville, putting him pretty close to Ball Cemetery. We went to his place for a Halloween party. I can't remember what everyone's Halloween costume was, with exception to a Darth Vader costume worn by either me or my little brother. I remember this because 1, we kept the Darth Vader mask in the years to follow, and 2, well, I'll save that for later. All the kids went on a tractor-pulled hayride. The tractor was one of those old tractors that looks like this. All the kids got into the back and we set off. In hindsight, as an adult, this was probably an excuse for the adults at the party to get some alone time so they can drink to their heart's content without having to worry about the little sugar-high brats running around, and as an adult, I can respect that. The tractor made its way to the titular Ball Cemetery. We didn't go inside as it's private property, so we just sat in the trailer and looked out into the cemetery. I remember seeing a group of at least 3 people standing around one of the headstones, which to my childhood brain didn't seem out of the ordinary. They probably knew someone buried at the site and were paying a visit. We didn't stay long, and eventually the tractor turned around and we made our way back to my friend's house. That's when it happened. We were about 5 minutes away from the cemetery when one of the back wheels of the tractor just popped off out of nowhere. I vividly remember seeing the wheel roll off and land firmly into the grass next to the road. All of us were stuck on a gravel road sandwiched between 2 cornfields, because this is Nebraska. Luckily, my friend's dad, who was driving the tractor, called our parents and they came to pick us up. Remember when I said there was a second reason I remember either me or my brother was in a Darth Vader costume? Well, that's because the costume came with a toy lightsaber, which I used to wave back and forth to signal our parents. Which was totally pointless, but my child brain thought I was helping. Regardless, all of the children were picked up and taken back to my friend's house, and all was good. Until I started to discuss the situation with the other kids who were on the ride. Remember the people who were standing around the gravestone? Well, some of the other kids on the ride were adamant that they were ghosts. We actually ended up getting into a pretty heated argument over it. With all that said, there are some questions that some viewers may have regarding this story of mine. Was a paranormal force behind the loss of the tractor's wheel? Were those 3 people in the cemetery actually ghosts? Probably not. Okay, I think I should make this clear as soon as possible. I don't believe in ghosts, and I see the irony in someone who doesn't believe in ghosts making a video about a haunted cemetery, but the thing is, the tractor I talked about was pretty old. It's not too unreasonable to assume the old thing just broke. As for the 3 people in the cemetery, Well, like I said, Ball Cemetery is a well-known location in this part of Nebraska. I initially rationalized it was people visiting someone they knew buried at the cemetery, but considering the cemetery is private property and owned by the Ball family, I find it more likely that there were people visiting a popular paranormal site. I know that may seem anticlimactic, but now we're gonna get into the juicy stuff. Let's talk about the haunting of Ball Cemetery. Just about every website discussing Ball Cemetery I visited says the same thing. And when I say they say the same thing, I mean they're straight up plagiarizing each other. But regardless, there are supposedly two ghosts residing in the cemetery, one male, the other female. The male ghost is described as tall and said to have a short temper. He's not afraid to attack late-night trespassers. Most of the sites I read ask if this is the vengeful spirit of Rattlesnake Pete himself, and I don't know why. There are tons of men buried at Ball Cemetery, so it beats me why people pick out Rattlesnake Pete of all people. Probably because he's one of the most well-known people buried at the cemetery, which makes him an easy target for this kind of thing. As for the female ghost, it's been said that her disembodied whispers, laughs, and singing can be heard from the cemetery. Many have suggested that this is the ghost of Mary Mumford, another resident of the cemetery, and again, no clue why. There's a ton of women buried there, so how do people know it's Mary Mumford and not anyone else? But I digress. There are reports of people's clothes being tugged by seemingly nothing, gravestones falling over and getting back up on their own, the sounds of leaves rustling or twigs snapping coming from nowhere, and visitors leaving with unexplainable cuts, scratches, and bruises. There's also quite a few mysterious photos and videos. There's this one group called Prism, who are well known for ripping off the cover of a Pink Floyd album, as well as paranormal investigation. They visited Ball Cemetery twice and documented their findings on the website, which is a mixed bag. The first picture shows one of the Prism crew members standing by the front gates with apparent orbs floating in the air. I'm not a camera expert by any means, but this kind of looks like reflections of light on the lens. I might be horribly wrong by saying that, but at first glance, this picture doesn't really impress me, and the same can be said about the second orb picture. The second picture, on the other hand, is far more fascinating. I initially thought it was just smoke coming from a fire, but when I enlarged the image, I noticed a lack of fire. I have no idea what this smoky stuff is or how it got there, but I guess that's part of the reason why I like this image a lot more. There's also this image of one of the gravestones with something blurry on the left of the frame. Again, this could easily be explained as motion blur, so I'm not all that impressed. There are 4 pictures of supposed paranormal events caught on camera on this website, and only one of them has managed to pique my interest. 1 out of 4 isn't exactly a good score, but there is a video on the same page. Maybe that will win me over. Right? Alright, so I got the video pulled up here. I'm just gonna take a quick look at it. Big music. Just some of the same pictures. The site. Okay. Good little recording. "3D spectrogram." Okay. Deduction. Okay. What? Why are you slowing down the audio? What? What is that supposed to prove? How does slowing down the... Why are you... What is slowing down the audio? Huh? Why bother slowing down the audio? What does that prove? Like, was that weird? Like, is that supposed to, like, that... Like, the not buzzing thing, is that supposed to be it? Because, I don't... Like, that could just be, like, a byproduct of the noise reduction, I suppose. I don't know how that's supposed to be convincing, anyway. Okay, so the video didn't exactly impress me either, but let's look at the comments. The first one isn't really worthwhile. He says he went there and nothing spooky happened, and that they were chased off the property. Nothing you see here. The next commenter shares a selfie they took in Ball Cemetery, and she claims there's a little girl in the background, but I can't find her. Even in the zoomed-in image, I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking for. This, I think? I'm not sure. I didn't really get much out of this one either. But the last comment. I'm gonna copy-paste the comment and read it out for you now. I'll provide a link to the site in the description so you can check it out for yourself if you're curious. A friend and I have visited Ball a handful of times, but the last two she brought a Ouija board. I believe in the paranormal realm and whatnot, but I had little trust that would actually work. But as far as I'm concerned, it did. We put the Ouija board on Mary and John Munford's gravestone and sat at either side. The first time we thought it may have been Mary. When it first moved, I thought my friend was moving it, but I could just tell she wasn't. I jumped up and walked away from the board before returning and saying goodbye. That part wasn't the problem. It was the second time we went back, which was just last night around 6:30 p.m. The second we got there, I'm not sure if it was just my nerves, but the whole place just felt off. We sat down at the same spot and began contact. I remember there was a lot of sounds like birds, decorations suddenly making noises, and rustling, but the second the planchette began moving, everything went very quiet. No birds, no rustling, nothing. There was a heavy feeling around us, and it moved across the board. My friend asked, "Is anyone here? Mary, are you here?" The planchette began moving across the letters RAVIO. At this point, I was panicking on the inside, so I began asking her to end the conversation since she started it. But she asked another question instead, which was, "What do you have to say to us?" It replied with the letters DKS. After it replied, we said goodbye and left immediately. I have looked up the names and letters but haven't found anything. I'm not saying we summoned a demon or anything, but whatever was there wasn't kind, and you could just feel the energy. Now this is interesting. I finally found something else worthwhile on this site. I mean, the story may not even be legit, but it's an interesting read regardless. So, thank you, third commenter. Your story was pretty cool. Anyway, I found another website discussing the cemetery, and it's actually pretty boring for the most part. There's really nothing new here, and the video provided just shows the cameraman walking around the property. The only noteworthy thing is this comment. I've been to the cemetery on many occasions, at various hours. I have captured in photos, both film and digital, many spirits and colored energies. Colored energies? What the hell does that mean? Colored energies. What is this? Color energies. We call these the color energies, and it's a unique mix of fiery red, sunshine yellow, earth green, and cool color energies that determine how and why people behave the way they do. Okay. What is this? Fiery red, competitive, demanding, determined, strong-willed, purposeful. Wait, so it's like a personality thing? Like, what does that have to do with ghosts? What does any of this have to do with ghosts? What are you talking about with colored energies? I have felt the change in temperatures. When the temp dropped, the activity was apparent. I have pics of children, a woman with long black hair crawling on the ground, orbs, a man on a horse patrolling the fence line. In case you're wondering, the commenter does not share any of these pictures. All we get is this, which is boring. You supposedly have these amazing pictures showing this crazy shit, and this is what you show us? A part of me is inclined to believe that the commenter doesn't actually have these pictures, or why else would they not post them? I can't help but feel disappointed. I was hoping to find some more interesting material on Ball Cemetery on these websites, but most of them have just been lacking so far. Well, I guess there's only one thing left to do. Look it up on YouTube. The first video I found was uploaded by a bloke named Mason Zenser, and loading up the video, I have already left a dislike on it. Oh. I also left a comment on that video, but I ended up deleting it because reading it back, it was way too mean-spirited. Looking at it now, the video isn't that bad. Mason tells the story of how he and his friends visited the cemetery over the weekend after midnight. Once they arrived, the group asked if there were any spirits with them. That's when the trees stopped moving, and the group heard someone in the cemetery walking around them. Mason goes on to describe a tall black figure that walked out from behind a tree. The figure then made its way to the group of friends, so they were like,
"Hell no, to the no, 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 hell to the no, hell to the no, to the no, 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 hell no, no, to the no, no, hell to the no, no, to the no, no."
So Mason and his friends get the hell out of Dodge. In all seriousness, I find it interesting that Mason described a tall figure, as that is consistent with reports of a tall male ghost in the cemetery. Mason even says he believes the figure was a bad spirit, which is also consistent with reports that said the ghost has a pretty short temper. You know, while I'm here, I might as well make things right. There, you really didn't deserve that. I'm not gonna like the video. I'm nice, but I'm not that nice. The next video was uploaded by Miguel Redlin. It features 3 friends roaming around the cemetery to investigate. They even utilized an EMF detector, which did pick up something at one point. They ended up placing the device on a grave and it just turned off. I don't think it's too unreasonable to assume the EMF detector just turned off on its own, because there are some devices that have that ability, but then again, I don't know anything about how EMF detectors work, so that idea might be completely nonsense for all I know. There are instances of screams, cries, and other noises caught on camera, but don't get too excited. The sounds are barely audible, and you wouldn't notice them unless they were pointed out by the video. One of the 3 guys claims to have experienced an energy. At the end of the video, he elaborates that he felt it come up behind him. He turned and felt what he described as a wave of energy hit him. The trio ended up leaving because they were on private property and they heard a car coming, so decided to err on the side of caution. The trio said they would return, but visiting the rest of their channel, if they have returned to the cemetery, they have yet to upload it at the time of writing. They did, however, create the masterpiece duology that is Great Value Batman. I can see some people finding this video disappointing, but I think it's neat. The background music helps set the tone, and seeing them explore a supposedly haunted cemetery in the dead of night gives it a creepy vibe. And can we appreciate the balls these guys have? Like I said before, I don't really believe in ghosts, but I'm still too much of a pussy to go into the cemetery at night. These chads are willing to injure themselves to investigate the paranormal.
Finally made it. This place is... Ow! Fudge. Stepped on a rock.
Truly an inspiration to us all. The final video I want to talk about comes from Mystical Shadows 402. The video starts off by stating everything that every website on Ball Cemetery says. Private Cemetery, Rattlesnake Pete, Buffalo Bill, Tall Ghost, Mary Mumford, yada yada yada. During all this, we see some pictures on screen depicting apparent paranormal activity. These pictures come with captions and circles so you actually know what to look for. Unlike some photos. That being said, the real meat and potatoes of this video doesn't start until about 3.5 minutes in, when the crew use an EVP and this happens. I'm not gonna lie, those sounds freaked me out when I first heard them. Thank God I watched the video in the morning and not at night, because I probably would have had nightmares if I did. The crew members sit in the car and listen to the sounds for quite some time. Eventually, the car lights start to flicker and a storm rains down, so the two decide to call it a day. Other than those creepy noises, not much of note happens in the final video. Before I bring this video to a close, there's an issue I feel I need to address. Trespassing and vandalism are huge problems with Ball Cemetery, which is simultaneously sad and frustrating. Ball Cemetery is private property, and you should not enter without permission from the owners. Even if this wasn't the case, you just can't go in there all willy-nilly and mess around. It's a cemetery, for crying out loud. It's a resting place for the deceased, not a tourist trap. I have no problem with individuals visiting and investigating a Ball cemetery as long as it's done legally and with respect. If you're not willing to get permission from the landowners or respect the dead buried at the cemetery, then stay away. Personally, I think it's cool that this part of the state I live in has its own local urban legend, but trespassing and vandalism is the unfortunate dark side of this phenomenon, and it's really sad to see, and I'm not cool with it. In conclusion, Ball Cemetery is quite a mysterious case. As I said, I don't really believe in ghosts, but I still enjoyed reading up on Ball Cemetery. It hasn't convinced me, but I still had fun making this video. Will the mysterious events of Ball Cemetery ever have rational explanations? Probably not, but I think I prefer it that way. It's like a magic trick. Not knowing is part of the fun. If there are ghosts residing within the confines of Ball Cemetery, let's hope they can rest in peace. Anyway, that's all for me for today, so come by next time. Can't wait to see you there. Until then, EB out.